Hi, friends. It's Mr. Lake with your third grade ELA lesson for today. If you'll follow along with me, I'll read our intention and success criteria. We are learning to describe how one part of a story builds on another. We will be successful when we can identify transition words that show sequence, explain the sequence of events in a story, reorder the events of a story so that they are in order, and explain how one event affects another event. I'd first like to start out by looking at this anchor chart for sequencing. If you remember, sequencing is when we put things in order. And as a writer or as an author does for the reader, putting things in order has certain keywords or clue words that lets us know that things are being put in a specific order, especially in a story, and it helps understand how the story is building upon itself and another event. Some words to look for are first, next, then, finally. Have you seen those in a story before? I bet you have. And then down here in the green are other clue words that are some additional sequencing words. After, before. Yeah, we've used these words before, and we've read them before. Before we start our chapter 3 today of the case of the gasping garbage, here are two words that will be in the chapter that you might be unfamiliar with. The first word is confirmed. If something is confirmed, it means that it has been proven, or it is known to be true. Have you ever confirmed something that you've told somebody? I bet you have. The second word is naturalist. A naturalist is an expert or someone that is studying natural history, such as a biologist, a zoologist. Today, with our reading, we will be reading Chapter 3, Frog Hollow. If you'll follow along, I'll read. It was Friday after school when Drake Doyle was once again busy with an important experiment. Test tubes bubbled and beakers boiled. Just as I thought, he murmured. My hypothesis is confirmed. He wiped the fog off his glasses and scribbled in his lab notebook. Just then there was a knock at the door. Come in, said Drake. Mrs. Doyle popped her head around the door. You have a visitor, she said. A wet one. And in trotted Dr. Livingston. Mrs. Doyle closed the door. Drake put down his notebook. This must be important, he thought. Very important. Nell never sent Dr. Livingston unless it was highly important. Good boy, said Drake. He scratched Dr. Livingston behind his ears, then reached inside the pouch that hung from Dr. Livingston's neck. Drake withdrew a blank sheet of paper. He flicked on a lamp and held the paper over a bulb. Gradually, words appeared. Detective Drake, meet me at Frog Hollow, ASAP. Not a moment to lose. Signed, Naturalist Nell. P.S. Bring umbrella, etc. It's wet. Drake quickly pulled on his raincoat and boots. He grabbed his umbrella on his way out the back door. Bye, Mom. I'll be at Frog Hollow with Nell. Affirmative, said Mrs. Doyle. Be back by supper time. Drake closed the door behind him and pushed up his glasses with his finger. He whipped open his umbrella and said, Follow me, to Dr. Livingston. Drake stepped off the porch into the rain, promptly slipped, and fell with a splat. Dr. Livingston licked Drake's face. Drake struggled to his feet, and off they went. Over hill and over dale. Finally, they reached Frog Hollow, and there was Nell in her yellow raincoat and naturalist cap. She was examining something with her magnifying glass. What is it, Naturalist Nell? Drake asked, bending down beside her. Besides being a superb scientist, Nell Fossey was also a naturalist. If it crawled, Nell took notes. If it hopped, Nell followed. If it grew, Nell drew graphs. Nell loved nature. Nature was her specialty. But today, Nell was troubled. Something was wrong, very wrong. Look here, she said. This is a leopard frog. In fact, this whole meadow is full of them. But you already knew that. Correct, agreed Drake. That's why it's called Frog Hollow. Every spring, Nell continued, female leopard frogs must find a pond in which to lay their eggs. So what's the problem? Asked Drake. Follow this frog and you'll find your answer, replied Nell. The frog began to hop. Nell and Drake followed with Dr. Livingston close behind. The frog hopped over a log. It hopped around a rock. It hopped through the tall grass. It hopped and hopped and hopped. And then something terrible happened. The frog hopped onto a road and zoom, squish. Ew, said Drake. Ugly, said Nell. Woof, said Dr. Livingston. Now what do we do? Asked Drake. Follow me, said Nell. After looking in both directions, Nell led the way across the road and down the other side. And there, sitting all alone with not a frog in sight, was a pond. I think I see the problem, said Drake. Indeed, answered Nell. This road was built just a few months ago. In order for the female frog to lay their eggs, they have to cross the road, finished Drake. Exactly, and you can see the results for yourself, Nell sighed. The whole leopard frog population is in danger. If they can't get to the pond, there won't be any new frogs. So what can we do? Asked Drake. All right, friends. There were some transition words on these 2 pages. Can you identify those transition words that lets me know as a reader that things are happening in a sequenced order? Well, if I look at page 20 up here in the second paragraph, I see the word finally. So Drake had left his house. He had fell in a puddle. He got up, struggled to his feet, and then finally he had reached Frog Hollow. So there was a sequence of events. Over on page 21, I see the word after, which that let me know that after they had witnessed that leopard frog getting squished, Nell had started her investigation and looking at the road and what was happening and tell us what she was going to do next. Let's continue to read. Nell set her mouth in a firm line. Drake could tell she was serious, dead serious. Come to my house, she said. My mom's still at work, but I'm sure she won't mind if we make some road signs. We must save the frogs. Check, said Drake. Nell's bedroom was like a jungle. Nature headquarters, they called it. Terrariums, aquariums, fly traps, and ant farms lined the walls. Paper vines hung from huge paper mache trees. A moist, hamsterish smell of sawdust, fish food, and lizard breath clung to the air. It was even a little steamy. Drake's glasses fogged. All afternoon they worked. They outlined and colored and glittered and painted. They glued and stapled and taped and hammered. Finally, they were finished. Slow down, the sign said. Frog crossing, nature in progress. There, Nell nodded with satisfaction. That should do it. All right, boys and girls, that brings us to the end of chapter 3. A lot of events were happening. Why do you think Nell and Drake were making signs? That's right. If we look back up here at paragraph 1 on page 23, we notice that Nell is talking about going back to her house and they're making signs. And that last line, we must save the frogs, kind of gives us an inference to know that they're going to make signs about frogs and saving them so they don't get squashed like that leopard frog. Nice job, friends. Here are some questions that your teacher might discuss with you today. What are some transition words in this chapter? Why do Drake and Nell make signs? And as you're explaining today, try and practice using those transition words when you refer back to the story and using that as your evidence. For your assignment today, you will be creating a quick little sequencing event of how to do it. It can be anything. If you remember sequencing, it's putting things in order. For instance, I love to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So the first thing I do is I get 2 slices of bread. Then I get the peanut butter and lather my knife with some peanut butter and lather it onto my bread. Next, I get a scoop of jelly and put that on the other side and smear it all over that bread too. You see, third graders, using those sequencing words. Again, in the green, there are additional words, and you might know some other sequencing words. Have fun with your assignment today. Let's take a quick peek at our learning intention and our success criteria and see how we're doing. Remember, we are learning to describe how one part of a story builds on another by using sequencing eventful words. You're going to be successful when you can identify transition words that show sequence. Did we do that today? I think you did a good job. Make sure you express that to your teacher as your explanation in your discussion time today. Explain the sequence of events in a story. And then later on, we will reorder the events of a story so that they are in order and practice that sequencing. Nice job today, friends. And don't forget to read at least 20 minutes every day. Until next time,